little baby here. Baby, little baby. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Say good morning, Ryder. Say good morning, everybody. He's like, I'm having none of this today. Huh. You don't want no part of today, huh? He's funny when I get home from work. I pick him up, and he goes stiff, and then he puts his head back, and I do the same thing, and we look at each other out the corner of our eyes like, you left all day. That's what he's thinking. It's a big old baby, huh? Anyway. Okay, I didn't know you could hear me when I wasn't on camera. Anyway. Mama, baby boy. Well, I'm Sandra, and I'm an alcoholic. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And you're going to have to go get or go get your toy. Go get your lamb. Your lamb's on the couch. Get your lamb. Let me get his lamb. This is his lamb. He loves this thing. So this is the second one that we got him. Because he tore all the stuffing out of the first one. And once we got him to start playing with toys, it was like amazement because he plays with this thing all the time. So, whoop. He picked it up and was going to his bed on the couch. Anyways. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. I don't know why it's so baffling. Blah, blah. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defective characters. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when wrong, promptly admit it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So please be mindful in the chats or the comments. This is a judgment-free zone, so try to not judge anyone in the comments or the chat. Some people come here just to help other family members or a friend who they know is suffering from alcoholism, that they just don't understand how to talk to them. And so that's why I share it here, is so that way maybe the next person can get that help that they need. And I always put in the description what I'm reading, We're in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and on page 458 in the fourth edition, and it is Listening to the Wind. Listening to the Wind. It took an angel to introduce the Native American woman to AA and recovery. I started drinking when I was around 11 years old. I stayed with my brother and his wife just outside of Gallup, New Mexico. We were poor. The smell of beans and fresh tortillas symbolized home to me. I slept in a bed with 3 other children where we huddled close to keep warm in the freezing winter. The snow was deep around us. I had a hard time reading and understanding schoolwork, so I skipped school every chance I got. My dad and grandma had told me the old stories about the longhouse and the travels of our people across the desert and mountains of this country. I met a boy, and together we ditched school and stole a truck. We drank tequila and explored the red mesas together. Sometimes we sat in the shade of the trading post directly across the street from the tracks. When the train rumbled through the dusty small town near the reservation, it promised glamorous places far away. When I was 15 years old, I arrived alone in San Francisco with a guitar, a small suitcase, and $30 and went to several taverns and coffee houses in search of a job singing. I believed I could pursue a career as a performer. 3 days later, I found myself sleeping in a doorway to stay out of the rain that had fallen all day. I was broke and cold and had nowhere else to go. The only thing I had left was my pride, which prevented me from trying to reach my brother by phone or finding my way back to the only people who ever really knew me. Sometimes in the middle of the long, restless night, a kindly, middle-aged white man laid his hands on my shoulder. "Come on, young lady," he said. "Let's get you to some place warm and get you something to eat." The price he asked in return seemed little considering the cold, rainy night behind me. I left his hotel with $50 in my hand. Thus began a long and somewhat profitable career in prostitution and working all night. I would drink to forget what I had to do to pay the rent until the sunrise brought sleep. The weeks passed. I started stealing and robbed a gas station and a liquor store. I made very few friends. I had learned to trust no one. One night around 8 o'clock, a car pulled up to the curb just as I had settled myself half drunk against the wall of a building. I figured I had met my companion for the evening. We made the appropriate conversation to confirm the deal, and I got into the car. Suddenly, I felt a deafening blow to my temple. I was knocked senseless. In a desolate area across town, I was pulled from the car, pistol whipped, and left to die in the mud with rain falling softly upon me. I came to in a hospital room with bars on the windows. I spent 7 weeks there, having repeated surgeries and barely recognizing my surroundings each time I woke up. Finally, when I was able to walk around a little, a policewoman came and I was taken to county jail. It was my third arrest in 2 months. Nearly 2 years on the streets had taken its toll. The judge said I could not be rehabilitated and I was charged with 18 counts of felonies. I would not see the streets again for nearly 26 months. I was 17 years old. The first few months I would have done just about anything for a drink. I knew I was powerless over the drugs, but I really couldn't see what harm there was in alcohol. In the summer, I was released. I wasn't sure where I was going, but a nice cold beer sure sounded like a refreshing celebration of freedom. I bought a 6-pack and a bus ticket. When I got off the bus, I got a waitressing job in a bar. By the end of my first shift, however, I had enough money to get a bottle of a bottle and a sleazy motel room nearby. A few weeks later, I saw him, the only Indian I had met in a very long time. He was leaning over a pool table when I came to work. I put on my apron, grabbed a tray, and headed straight for him to see if he needed a refill. Who let you off the reservation? He asked. I was furious, humiliated, and embarrassed. That man became the father of my firstborn child. My relationship with him lasted only a few months and was the first of many mutually abusive relationships that would continue over the next few years. I found myself alone, drunk, homeless, and pregnant in a matter of weeks. Afraid that I would wind up back in jail, I went to live with my brother and sister-in-law. My brother had gotten a very good job and moved to Hawaii. My son was born there, and on the day of his birth, I found my purpose in life. I was born to be a mom. He was beautiful, straight black hair and dark eyes. I had never felt like this in my life. I could put my past behind me once again and move forward into a new life with my child. After a year or so, I became bored with my life in the islands, and the guy I had been dating, I said goodbye to my waitressing job and my family and moved to California with my 1-year-old son. I needed transportation, but cars cost too much money. Where could I get lots of money? It did not seem appropriate to go back to prostitution in the same town where I was raising my son. I could take the bus to the next town, work all night, and come home in the morning if I could get someone to watch my little boy. The night job paid well, as long as I didn't work close to home where my child would attend school. Everything would be fine. Also, I could drink on the job. I kept the welfare though because it provided health insurance. I did quite well financially. After 1 year, I found a beautiful large apartment that had a view of the ocean, bought a new car and a purebred collie dog. The social workers started getting very nosy. I could not figure out what their problem was. I led a double life. By day, I was super mom, and by night, I was a drunken hooker. I met a wonderful man at the beach, and we fell in love. Everything was like heaven on earth until he asked where I worked. Of course, I lied. I told him I worked for the government and held a top security clearance, which required complete secrecy. That's why I had to work nights, undercover, out of town, on weekends. Now, maybe he would stop asking so many questions, but instead he proposed. We moved in together, and my working arrangement became nearly impossible to live with. Excuse me. So did my conscience. One night on my way to work, I sat in rush hour traffic on the freeway. I broke down in tears and felt all the lies of my life burst open inside me. I hated myself and I wanted to die. I couldn't tell him the truth, but I couldn't continue to lie to him either. Suddenly, a great light came on. It was the best idea I had ever had. I got off the freeway at the next ramp, drove home, and told him I got fired. He took it well, and we celebrated with a huge bottle of wine. It took a lot of booze to cover the nightmares of my past, but I was sure I could get around this small problem before long. I never did. The relationship broke up over my drinking, and I packed my little car and moved myself, my son, and our dog and 3 cats to the mountains. This mountain town was a place I had visited as a child with Dad and Grandma. Memories of the stories of my childhood and our Indian people flooded in. I got a job cleaning cabins for a local resort lodge and got back on welfare. Shortly after our move, my son started school. By this time, I was consuming nearly a fifth of tequila each day, and blackouts were occurring on a regular basis. One day, I got up as usual. The last thing I remember was feeling so shaky I could hardly stand up. I ate a tablespoon of honey, hoping it would give me the necessary sugar rush. The next conscious memory was the emergency room. They said I was suffering from malnour. Y'all know what I mean. Hey, Steve. Malnutrition. There's the word. I was nearly 30 pounds underweight. They were the oddest to make me or to ask me how much I drank. What could that possibly have to do with anything? I promised I would never do it again. For the first time in my life, I tried very hard to quit drinking. After a few days of shakes and nausea, I decided that a shot of tequila wouldn't hurt. I had managed to put on a little weight, but 6 months later I collapsed and was diagnosed with bleeding ulcer. I was in the hospital for 4 days that time. They told me that if I didn't stop drinking, I would probably die. My son called his grandparents and they traveled to the mountains to visit us. I had not seen them for years. We got along much better than I expected. The relationship they formed with my son was incredible. My dad took his grandson hiking in the wilderness, and Mom helped out with looking after him while I worked. My health continued to fail. My parents wound up moving to our town in an attempt to help their grandson and me. My dad and I decided to go to Native American gathering. I hadn't been to one of these powwows since I was a child. When we heard the drums and watched the dancers, I felt some great passion well up inside me. I felt like an outsider. I wanted to drink. I wore my hair down to my waist and wore a lot of makeup, turquoise jewelry. I was going to say makeup, but jumping ahead of myself. I had collected over the years. I looked like the people, but I certainly didn't feel like one of them. I felt as if they all knew something I didn't. In an effort to prove I was getting better, I started hitting the streets again in order to make more money. I told my parents that I was going down the mountain to visit friends. I received my third arrest for drunk driving on one of the trips back. After working all weekend, the night in jail seemed a long time to go without a drink. Weeks and months passed, and the blackouts continued, getting worse. Then I met a man in a local bar. I didn't like him very well, but he had quite a lot of money, and he sure liked me. He took me to nice restaurants and bought me expensive gifts, as long as I had a buzz on. With a few drinks, I could tolerate him. One thing led to another, and I wound up married. The most powerful motive I had was getting out of the streets and being provided for. I had begun to think I did not have much longer to live. The faces of my doctors were looking more and more grim every time I went into the hospital to dry out. The marriage was a farce, and it didn't take long for this man to figure that out. Someone had told him about my past, and he demanded to know the truth. I was tired, nauseated, and drunk. I just didn't care anymore. So I admitted everything. We fought every day after that, and my visit to the hospital became more frequent. One afternoon, I decided I no longer wanted to live and got the gun from over the fireplace. I owe my life to the man I had married. He heard my child scream from the out back and came running into the house. He grabbed the gun and wrestled it away from me. I was numb and couldn't figure out what had happened. My son was taken away from me by the authorities, and I was placed in a locked ward for the criminally insane. I spent 3 days there on legal hold. After I was released, most of the next weeks was a blur. One night I caught my husband with another woman. We fought, and I followed him in my car and tried to run him down right in the middle of the main street in town. The incident caused a 6-car pileup, and when the law caught up with me later, I was sent to the locked ward again. I do not remember arriving there, and when I woke up, I didn't know where I was. I was tied to a table with restraints around my wrists, both ankles, and my neck. They shot heavy drugs into my veins and kept me like that for a long time. I was released 5 days later. When I left, there was no one there to drive me home. So I hitchhiked. The house was dark and locked, and no one was anywhere around to let me in. I got a bottle and sat in the snow on the back porch and drank. One day I decided I'd better go to the laundromat and wash some clothes. There was a woman there with a couple of kids. She moved around quickly, folding clothes and stacking them neatly in a couple of huge baskets. Where did she get her energy? Suddenly I realized I had to put my clothes into the dryers. I couldn't remember which washers I had put them in. I looked into probably 20 different washers. I made up my mind how to handle the situation. I would stay here until everyone else had left. I would keep whatever clothes were left behind, as well as my own. As the other woman finished her task, she was writing something down on a small piece of paper. She loaded her baskets and kids into her car and came back into the laundromat. She came right up to me and handed me the small blue paper. I couldn't make out what it said. I smiled politely and slurred a friendly thank you. Later, I made out the telephone number and the handwritten message below. If you ever want to stop drinking, call Alcoholics Anonymous 24 hours a day. Hey, Tony, love you too. Why had she given me this, and what made her think I was drinking? Couldn't she see that my bottle was soda? Of all the nerve. I was mortified. I folded the paper neatly and put it in the back pocket of my jeans. As the next few weeks passed, I became sicker by the day. One morning, I woke up alone as usual. I hadn't seen my husband in a long time. I needed a drink, and the bottle on the bedside table was dry. I rose on my shaky legs, but they refused to hold my weight. I fell to the floor and began crawling around the house looking for a bottle. Nothing. This meant I had to leave the house and get to a store. I found my empty purse on the floor, but I knew I could never make it to the car. I became terrified. Who could I call? I never saw any friends anymore, and there was no way I could call family. I remember the number in the pocket of my jeans. I hadn't even gotten dressed for several days. Where were the jeans? I searched the house until I found them on the floor of the bedroom. The number was in the pocket. After 3 tries, I managed to dial a number. A woman's voice answered. I got this number from you. Uh, is this AA? I asked. Yes. Do you want to stop drinking? Please, yes. I need help. Oh God, I felt the fiery tears run down my face. 5 minutes later, she pulled into my driveway. She must have been some kind of angel. How had she appeared from nowhere that day in the laundromat? How had she known? How had I kept her number all that time without losing it? The AA woman made sure I had no more alcohol in the house. She was very tough on me for a long time. I went to meetings every day and started taking the steps. The first step showed me that I was powerless over alcohol and anything else that threatened my sobriety or muddled my thinking. Alcohol was only a symptom of much deeper problems of dishonesty and denial. Now it was a matter of coming to grips with a power greater than myself. That was very hard for me. How could all these white people even begin to think they could understand me? So they brought a sober Indian woman up to work with me for a day. That was a very powerful day. The Indian woman cut me no slack at all. I will never forget her. She convinced me I was not unique. She said these white folks were the best thing that ever happened to me. Where would you be without them? She asked. What are the alternatives? You got any better ideas for yourself? How many Indians do you know who are going to help you sober up? At the time, I couldn't think of any. I surrendered behind the tears of no answers and decided to do it their way. I found the power greater than myself to be the magic above the heads of the people in the meetings. I chose to call the magic Great Spirit. The 12 steps worked like a crowbar, prying into my dishonesty and fear. I didn't like the things I learned about myself, but I didn't want to go back where I had come from. I found out that there was no substance on the planet that could help me get honest. I would do just about anything to avoid working on myself. The thing that kept me sober until I got a grip on honesty was the love of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I made some friends for the first time in my life. Real friends that cared, even when I was broke and feeling desperate. At 22 months of sobriety, I was finally able to complete an honest inventory. The fifth step enabled me to see my part in my resentments and fears. In the chapter, How It Works, in the Big Book, I was shown some questions. The answers to these questions provided me with knowledge about my reaction to the conditions in my life. Every response to the resentment, real or imagined, had been sick and self-destructive. I was allowing others to control my sense of well-being and behavior. I came to understand that the behavior, opinions, and thoughts of others were none of my business. The only business I was to be concerned with was my own. I asked my higher power to remove from me everything that stood in my way of my usefulness to him and others, and to help me build a new life. I met my current husband in an AA meeting. Together, we carry the message to Indian people on reservations all over the country. I started out the 5th grade level in school when I had been sober nearly 2 years. After college, I started my own business. Today, I publish the books I write. Our daughter was born during my early sobriety, and she is in high school now. She has never seen her mother take a drink. Our family has returned to the spirituality of our ancestors. We attend sweat lodges and other ancient ceremonies with our people on sovereign native land. We take panels of sober natives into Indian boarding schools and institutions and share about recovery. My life is filled with honesty today. Every action, word, prayer, and 12-step call is an investment in my spiritual freedom and fulfillment. I am in love and proud to be a Native American. At an AA meeting on the Indian reservation, I heard the words, "Sobriety is tradition." I stand at the top of the sacred mountain and I listen to the wind. I have the conscious daily contact with my Creator today, and He loves me. Everything is sacred as a result of the 12 steps and the love and recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. So I had a time when I was a teenager. Mind you, y'all know I drank as a teenager. And even then I knew I could become that alcoholic that I didn't ever want to become. But later I did become that. So I think I was an alcoholic my whole life. But I skipped school all the time. I stole cigarettes as a teenager. I was a minor and went into the bars. I was like 16. It was before my son was born, so I was 16. And I would get dressed up with all my friends, and they were all adults, and so I would go in the bar. And I kicked out of one. But, I hung out with all the older people. And so I always had that alcohol as a teenager if I wanted to drink it. I could convince them all to buy it for me. But like I said, I skipped school a lot growing up. I dropped out after 8th grade. I started my freshman year and I just decided it wasn't for me, so I stopped going. My parents moved to the country thinking that would change us, me and my sister, because we were really rebellious and running away and all kinds of stuff, living in town. So we moved to the country, and I don't know if they were thinking maybe we would stop running away, but it didn't work because we still ran away. I think so. My sister went one way and I went the other way. We had our own separate friends, but they were all connected. It was confusing. Anyway, I didn't really want to have a career as a teenager. or as a kid, I was like, I didn't know what I wanted to be or who I wanted to become. But I certainly knew I did not want to become the alcoholic. So I fought it for many, many, many years. And then when I hit my 30s was when I just dove into it without realizing that's where I was. And so my sister and I were in the alcoholic state at the same time. We started, I think, pretty much on the same day. I remember we would drink a lot. First, we would drink the whiskey, and that was not a good thing because we were violent to each other, especially when we were in the thick of our drinking. But she went her way, I went my way, and it was kind of weird because sometimes I would go into town from the countryside into the city, into Portland area, and people be waving at me like they know me, and I'm like, you don't know me, I don't know you. And they're like, Lily, Lily. And I'm like, I'm not Lily. And that was, kind of how it happened is we went our separate ways, and then we became pregnant pretty close together and had our oldest kids. They are 6 weeks apart. So yeah, we were pregnant together and not drinking, obviously. We were living with our parents and yeah. But our kids were taken when we were living together, and so we ended up, sorry, my phone just went off. We ended up getting a place in town, and that we drank quite a bit there. But anyway, so the alcohol, when I started drinking all day, every day, it became everything to me. And I didn't care about nothing at all other than getting that next drink. And I didn't have an income. I didn't start working until I was out of my drinking days. Well, I had quit, I don't know, maybe 4 months before, maybe 3 months before I got my first actual job, and worked it for a while. I was with that place for 2 years, I want to say. But anyways, so what I'm saying is you have the secret life while you're drinking. My thing is I wasn't so secret because I was only fooling myself, Everybody around me knew I was drinking and that I was an alcoholic. It was me that didn't know. But all of these things that happened to her, and then going through being an alcoholic and going into hospitals and stuff, I didn't end up going to hospitals except for once. And that was for my eye. Y'all know that story. But when I stopped drinking, everything changed. For me, my friend said, meet me at an AA meeting. I didn't hear over half of what they were saying. I was just excited because I was getting to see my friend that I hadn't seen since I was 17 years old. But somehow, some way, it worked to where, like this lady being in a laundry room, what I was going to say before is, as a teenager, there's this guy that appeared. I was in town, and I was walking. It was the middle of the night. I was walking around, and he just came out of nowhere and gave me a heart-shaped rock, and that just changed my whole perspective of everything as a teenager. But then coming into AA and stuff, being given the phone number for AA, I wasn't given the number for AA itself. I was given phone numbers for the women in AA. And after that first meeting, I don't know what happened, but I had to go again. And that's weird because I didn't hardly hear anything that they were saying, but somehow it told me to, love you too, Lily. It told me to call numbers on that list. And so I did. And AA has been a part of my life since. And I work my steps every single day. It might not seem like it, but trust me, I'm working it because I still have issues. And I'm not a saint. Don't want to be classified as one. Don't want to be nowhere near being one because I'm not perfect. There's no perfect in this life. So, but sobriety is definitely worth it. And being able to come out of it and be in the position of being able to share the stories of those rooms and share my own story of my alcoholic days and my recovery. And when I first got sober, I went through those withdrawals by myself. I didn't show anybody that I was withdrawing from that. It was scary, but I have to say it has been well worth it. Being able to see my boys graduate high school. I don't even think that they graduated a year apart. Well, they did about a year apart. And they didn't go to the same school. But being able to have a job, work my steps, see my kids graduate, watch my goddaughter grow up, finding that I am truly a grandma. I have a grandson and a granddaughter. They gave me purpose again, and having my friends that I left behind and the new friends that I've made in these rooms have really made a difference for me. And making those friends that hear my story and my sobriety and become like a family member to me, It's a blessing, and I'm forever grateful for AA for helping me to get to where I'm at now and being able to tell you guys about my life and my alcoholism and being able to work those steps and tell you guys that you're definitely not alone. You're not the only ones who suffer. There are a lot of us. And the fortunate ones get it. And I'm thankful for that every single day that I am sober and that I'm alive and that I get to be that person in society and spread the word of AA. And so with that, I hope you guys can find your strength in AA and find your meeting if you need one. And I'll keep doing mine here. But thank you guys, and if you're a newcomer, welcome. Hit the notification bell and subscribe so that way you can come to the next one. I'll be live again on Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I will be doing another AA meeting. And God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. Love you guys. Be safe. Stay sober.